Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the January 24th meeting of the Chapel Hill Town Council. Tonight marks our first business meeting of the new year, and we're pleased to have you join us. As a reminder, we do not allow signs in council chambers. If you have a sign, please just put it in your lap or put it on the floor. Before we get started, we have a proclamation to announce. Councilmember Berry, would you do the honors, please?
Good evening, everyone. Are there any mentors in the room? Mentors? Does anybody work with young people or others? Wonderful. Okay. National Mentoring Month is the month of January, and on behalf of Mayor Anderson and the Chapel Hill Town Council, I am pleased to announce that January 2024 is National Mentoring Month in Chapel Hill. National Mentoring Month brings awareness to the importance of quality mentoring that promotes healthy communication, positive self-esteem, emotional well-being, and growth of a young person and their relationships with other adults. The benefits of mentor-mentee relationships to a young person are many, including enhanced self-esteem and self-confidence, increased high school graduation rates and higher educational aspirations, stronger relationships with parents, teachers, and peers, and decreased likelihood of initiating drug or alcohol use. As someone who has been a mentor to a young person, a young leader in this community for 7 years now, I can attest to the fact that the adults benefit as much or maybe more than the students that we take on as mentees. In Chapel Hill and Orange County, we are extremely fortunate to have a number of local mentorship programs. For example, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Blue Ribbon, Mentor Advocate, and Musical Empowerment, which focus on building strong relationships between mentors and mentees in Chapel Hill and Orange County. A fuller list of organizations can be found in the proclamation that will be shared through the town's social media. With our proclamation tonight, we wish to encourage everyone to recognize those who serve as mentors for the important role they play in the lives of young people throughout our community. Additionally, we encourage individuals and organizations, such as businesses, government agencies, faith communities, and nonprofits to become more engaged in mentoring. 2 weeks ago, I had the good fortune to have the time with my mentee to join me. She's got a social life of her own now, but she joined me for a basketball game. It was an incredible experience. And if you don't already mentor, I really encourage you to consider it. We have many people, many young people waiting for you. Thank you.
Thank you. As Ms. Berry shared, we are very fortunate to have a well-organized mentoring program in Chapel Hill, so they're always in need of volunteers, and we encourage members of the community to learn more and sign up. What I should have said when we started is there is a seat open next to me. Councilmember Stegman is unable to join us tonight, but we will look forward to seeing her at our retreat next week. Moving on, we have 2 quick announcements. First, the town will be hosting a public information meeting on Rewriting Our Rules initiative. For those who are unfamiliar with this project, the town is in the process of rewriting our land use ordinances to make them compatible with our complete community vision. The information meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, January 31st at 6 p.m. in the library. It's a big deal. It's a huge initiative, and it's going to change the way we do development, our processes, and hopefully our great outcomes to come in the future. Second, registration is open for the 2024 People's Academy. The People's Academy is an amazing program that allows participants to learn about the inner workings of the town through field trips and other activities. The program begins on February 22nd and lasts through March 23rd. We hear glowing reviews every year. Registration is open through February 12th, and we encourage everyone to sign up. Up next, we have public comment, which we will be handling a little bit differently tonight. We have many people in the audience interested in speaking on the tragic situation in Gaza and have asked them to sign up separately. We will lead off with people wishing to bring forward petitions or to speak on other topics not on the printed agenda. I will then ask council for a motion to receive and refer petitions before we begin calling the next set of speakers. For members of the public wishing to speak, you will need to sign up with the town clerk if you have not done so already, and Amy is over here on this side of the room. For those wishing to bring a formal petition tonight, our practice is to receive petitions and refer them to the mayor and manager. We don't, as a rule, act on petitions at this time. For our petitions and speakers, Mayor Pro Tem Ryan will call 2 names at a time. The first person should come to the podium. The second person is on deck. So if you are in a seat that is in the middle of a row or in the back of the chambers, please come toward the front of the room on the side so it's easy for you to come forward when it's your turn. Finally, I want to remind everyone that council chambers needs to be a place where everyone can speak comfortably. It can be very difficult for an individual, especially someone who shares a different opinion than perhaps the majority in the room, to speak up. We want to make sure everyone feels safe and that what they have to say is heard. Please remember there's no clapping, cheering, booing, or excessive noise when people are speaking or afterwards. Also a reminder that on petitions, we ask that per our council rules that one person present the petition and others may speak at the time that petition may come back to council. So all that said, Mayor Ryan, will you please call our first speakers?
Awesome.
Oh,
All right. See, like, when did that
I've already given up the job and it's been like 5 minutes. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Ryan.
Okay, apologies in advance for any mispronunciations. We have Samantha Liu first, followed by Bhagyashree Behera in the on deck, which is probably that seat right in front.
Start whenever. Great.
Welcome, and the timer will be started for you, so you can just start whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here tonight. My name is Samantha Liu. I'm the director of the Chapel Hill Campus and Community Coalition, or the CCC. We're a community coalition public health that works to reduce the negative impacts of high-risk alcohol use via town-gown collaboration. I'm here tonight to speak to a petition that we've submitted on behalf of the CCC and our community partners. We ask that you please address comprehensively disruptive parties that have impinged on the quality of life of residential areas. We ask that you do this by adding a tool to our existing toolkit, which is a social host ordinance. The CCC has supported existing tools like the Good Neighbor Initiative, consistent code enforcement, landlord notifications, party registration, and loud party follow-ups. And these tools have been helpful, but significant disruptions remain, especially for older long-term residents, families with small children, and even neighboring UNC students. These disruptions include noise, trash, vandalism, parking, violence, and intoxication. Neighbors, both short and long-term, experience having been kept awake, dealing with trash and damage to their property and sense of safety and community. Research has shown that social host ordinances are unique in preventing comprehensively disruptive parties, thus reducing their negative impacts, and differentiating between small gatherings and comprehensively disruptive parties that involve dozens to hundreds of attendees, and resulting in multiple of the disruptions that I've mentioned. Our coalition knows and believes that socializing and partying is important to all of us as humans, but we know that we need more tools in place to promote responsible party hosts and mindful neighbors. In our petition and accompanying documents, you'll find a lot of information on our group's recommendations, as well as some frequently asked questions that we've received. Across several years, long-term residents, UNC students, community leaders, university leaders, legal advocates, and others have been part of researching the strategy, learning from other communities, and shaping the recommendations that are importantly tailored for Chapel Hill. As a result of that input, our recommendations include a civil post hoc ordinance, robust communication and education plan, guidelines to define a violation, accountability chain, restorative processes, and evaluation. You will hear from a few who've been involved, like Ryan Kalo from undergraduate student government and advocates from the Marion Cheek Jackson Center, including George Barrett and members of the student leadership group. If there are others in the room who may have been involved in our working group, provided input, asked questions of us, or come to a presentation or community conversation, could I please have you raise your hand? Cool, some of them may not be speaking, but want to acknowledge them. Our group has heard and accounted for differing opinions on this issue, and I appreciate everyone in attendance tonight for your engagement regardless of your opinion on our petition. I want to thank you all for hearing us out on this issue, and we hope you agree to continue this conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Behera, followed by Emily Phan.
Hello, my name is Bhagyashree Behera. I am a volunteer in the student leadership group with the Marion Cheek Jackson Center. I would like to share a written statement by Hudson Phan, an individual who lives at the North Side, last year about the need for the social host ordinance. He said, "I have lived in the North Side for the last 9 years and worked in the neighborhood for the last 15 years. Over the years, I have received dozens of calls from elderly 4th and 5th generation Northside neighbors and families with young children wrestling with how to respond to student party houses. Not just parties, which are fine, but raging parties, where you can see crowds marking their way from Rosemary, parties where you can hear 2 blocks over, and that leave the yards trashed with flip cups and furniture on the roof the next day. I've driven by backyard and rooftop parties of over 100 students who were just 20 feet from the window of a 90-year-old neighbor, kept awake into the night and shaken by the disrespect of a place she has worked her whole life to hold on to. One actually went to the hospital as a result. No joke. These same parties eventually would have the police called, who would come by, see white students, tell them to quiet down, and issue a warning that was effective until the police car drove out of view. More recently, now that I have a toddler, I have experienced firsthand the challenge of navigating student neighbors who understandably want to have a good time, but do not realize the impact it has on others. Last year, the house across the street from us had such loud parties monthly that the music shook our house and my son's crib, again, all the way across the street, and kept our family awake. I ended up reaching out to them a half a dozen times, and while these particular students responded to my midnight contact, the constant disturbance eroded my sense of neighborliness. As each party, the same problem would reemerge just as before. A new group of students has moved in who are not responsive to neighbors. Recently, the party was so loud that a neighbor across the street and 5 houses down from the party ended up calling the police near midnight when he could not get them to turn it down. 15 minutes after the police visited, the music and the noise resumed, disturbing his 2-year-old's sleep. Would these students have not been more careful had they known that they could receive a significant fine for such continued disturbance? The fine echoes the impact on our neighbors and limits the dozen houses with repeated parties that are the sources of an overwhelming majority of complaints. This tool can be monitored and data can be collected to ensure that it has the impact that it has proven to have in other college towns and that it is equitably applied. I believe that the impact will primarily be preventative, as the stricter rules on campus for parties are. This ordinance will support the many neighbors who have continued to fight for decades for the future in this community and to live here with the dignity and respect we all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Emily Phan, followed by Ghita Basurto.
Hello, I'm Emily. I'm a UNC student, and for the past 3 years, I've been a volunteer at the Marion Cheek Jackson Center. I will be reading a statement from Ms. Kathy Atwater. She is a 4th-generation Northside resident, and during my time working with the Jackson Center, I've had the pleasure of getting to know her. She says, "I am a longtime resident of the Northside community and was asked to share my opinion regarding the social host ordinance for the town of Chapel Hill. Because the Northside neighborhood is the closest to downtown and campus, we've experienced problems over the years with noise from loud parties, trash being strewn through the neighborhood, and disrespect for long-term residents and their properties. We have had to call the police on numerous occasions because of loud parties being held in the homes that were sold to investors and are now student rentals. We have had situations where students held party in their homes that spilled into the streets because of the hundreds of students that attended. Bands were playing at a sound that shook the walls of homes a block away. Intoxicated partygoers urinating in neighbors' yards, throwing red cups, beer bottles, and cans. screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs at 3 in the morning. There is a town noise ordinance that goes into effect at midnight, but for those residents who are retired and retire early, being awoken at 10:30 p.m. by loud noise is still a nuisance and a disrespect for one of the oldest African American neighborhoods in Chapel Hill. The university did institute party registration, where students can register their parties, and if there is a noise complaint, they will be notified to turn the party down. Not everyone registers their party, and for the older residents to have to be responsible for calling police, again, is a disrespect to the people and the history of the community. The minimum fines imposed upon those who violate the law do not deter them from continuing to be a disturbance to the neighborhood. If the current noise ordinance needs teeth in it to be enforced, and the social host ordinance is the process in which this can be accomplished, then I am in favor of it. I will say there are some students who work with the neighbors and have learned to be good neighbors. But then there are those who do not and have not learned to be good neighbors. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Ghita Basurto, followed by Cameron Milne.
Hi, my name is Ghita Basurto, and I'm a UNC student and also a member of the student leadership group at the Jackson Center. And I'm speaking on the behalf of another UNC student, Sarah, who couldn't be here but wanted to share her support for the social host ordinance petition. My name is Sarah Chakran, and I am a junior at UNC Chapel Hill. I am sorry I couldn't be here in person tonight to present my statement. I wanted to voice my support for the social host ordinance, which would be to the immense benefit of the neighbors, tenants, and property owners of Northside and Pine Knolls. I have long interacted with the neighbors and community members of Northside, and I will be living in Northside next school year. Ever since my first year here at UNC, I have been a service partner at the Jackson Center and then went on to work as a food justice fellow during the next academic year. During my time working and serving the communities of Northside, I have gotten to know many neighbors, young and old, that make up this community. As a student myself, I know how loud and disturbing parties can be, and most importantly, due to my work in Northside, I likewise understand the impact of these noises have on families and folks in Northside. This ordinance is a form of accountability for student neighbors and landlords and will help to ensure the well-being of the community, students and existing neighbors alike.
Thank you.
Bergen Murray, followed by George Barrett.
Hello all. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your time. My name is Cameron Myers-Milne, and I speak to you as a recent graduate from UNC Chapel Hill in support of the social host ordinance before you. I have heard countless testimonies from Chapel Hill residents over the years that have reiterated the need for preventative measures to stop disruptive, destructive, and loud parties, specifically in Northside neighborhood. What strikes me about the social host ordinance is the fine for repeat violators being so high that it brings accountability to the forefront for student neighbors and landlords. This call for accountability is particularly important in the historically Black neighborhood of Northside that is actively experiencing gentrification, a process of disruption and displacement in a long marginalized community. With feedback from residents, as you have heard some of tonight, being the experience of ongoing stress, anxiety, and property damage, I encourage the council to take action through the social host ordinance to prevent further harm from occurring here in Chapel Hill. And speaking again on the nature of harm and representing my own personal beliefs, I would be remiss if I did not connect my personal stance on the social host ordinance petition before you to my unequivocal support for a ceasefire in Gaza. This is not to make remarks on the resolution tonight. In Gaza, where there too are Palestinians experiencing ongoing stress, anxiety, loss of home, and loss of life. I draw this connection here today because I believe we as a town and you as a council capable of holding the multiplicities of how to prevent and reduce harm here in Chapel Hill and in Gaza. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next we have Bergen Murray, followed by George Barrett.
Hi, my name is Bergen, and I'm the president of the Marion Cheek Jackson Center Student Leadership Group. We work to bridge the gap between UNC students and long-term residents. As students, we support the proposed social host ordinance because we have heard from neighbors and seen firsthand how their quality of life has been impacted by students throwing loud and unruly parties. In Northside, the overwhelming majority of student residents are white. Thus, year after year, these parties are being thrown by privileged white students in a historically Black neighborhood filled with elders and families. One of our group members lived in Northside last year, and he has talked about how 2 of his friends who are long-term residents were affected by the loud noise and disruptiveness of student neighbors throwing parties. These neighbors live in 2 separate areas in Northside, and these parties were hosted by 2 different student households. They voiced their concerns to the students, but the student neighbors did not respond or accommodate the requests of these neighbors. Ultimately, one friend was unable to put his child to sleep due to the loud noise, and the other friend felt the house shaking until 3 a.m. due to the unnecessarily loud bass of the music. I went to talk to one of these households the following week, and I left feeling upset and angry at how defensive and unapologetic the students were about their party. I realized that this is just a tiny bit of what neighbors who have been living here for decades must have experienced. Both these parties took place the same weekend, which makes you wonder, how many parties does each household put up with each year? For a student, it's just a few parties a semester, but neighbors put up with multiple houses on their block throwing parties, not to mention the drunk shenanigans when students are walking through the neighborhood to and from these parties. The current mechanisms in place to address these issues in Chapel Hill have not prevented these problem gatherings. We obviously don't want this to stop other students from having fun, but we support limitations on activities that hurt the lives of other community members.
Thank you. George Barrett, followed by Twumasi Duah-Mensah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is George Barrett. I'm the Executive Director of the Marion Cheek Jackson Center for Saving and Making History. I've also lived in the Northside community previously. I lived there for 4 years, and I've had the privilege of working alongside the residents there, as well as you can see, many of the students who have been a part of this work for shared goals of making sure we honor, renew, and build community within Northside. I'm going to speak to you today also as a member of the working group. I joined the working group and I joined the Campus Community Coalition knowing from my experience of living in Northside and working in this community around how loud and unruly parties have affected community members, which I don't think I need to reiterate as you've heard from many of our student leaders here today. But I also joined because Northside, knowing even though the social house ordinance is proposed as a town ordinance, Northside as a space is one of the neighborhoods, Northside, Pine Hills, and Tin Top, are one of the neighborhoods that's most affected by these loud and unruly parties. And so when I joined the working group, just to talk to you about the process, that was great. We engaged with members of the community who were part of the working group from the beginning. We knew that this was something that was also evidence-based. We looked at the Maryland Collective, which is a study that was done, and also other studies, and had conversations with towns like Fort Collins, similar college towns to Chapel Hill, that showed that this is evidence-based, a successful deterrent to loud and unruly parties, which we know will have positive quality of life effects on neighborhoods in Chapel Hill, especially neighborhoods like Northside, Pine Hills, and Tin Top. And so what I have heard, not only from our students, people who have been involved in it, from neighbors, is that this is a tool that people want to see move forward. This is a tool that will join other tools that we have instituted in the town. This is a tool that will join the work that we're all doing, not only in Northside, but in other communities to really bridge the gap between long-term residents and students. It's a tool that will go and alongside a lot of the relationship building that you have heard from our fantastic student leaders here who have really embedded themselves in the community and have listened to community members who have experienced this and then gone forward and been alongside them to advocate for those shared interests, knowing that yes, people might have different thoughts about the ordinance and there's things that come up, but knowing that there is something that we need to do in our town to make sure that the quality of life of residents, especially those in our marginalized communities like Northside, Pine Hills, and Tin Top, are positive, and that those quality of life changes are actually put into effect. So I just want to say thank you for considering this. Excited to have you with the staff continue to work on it, and hopefully this will be something that we can continue having a conversation about in the future.
Okay, we have Twumasi Duah-Mensah, followed by Brian Caro.
Testing. Hello. Good evening to the council. My name is Duah-Mensah. I am a student at UNC and a student volunteer with the Marion-Cheek Jackson Center. I want to start this off with a testimony I was intrigued by a long-term Northside resident who confronted students who had thrown an unruly party and had left a lot of trash in another neighbor's yard. And the end result of that was they had come to an understanding. And I don't present this as a happy ending of sorts, but to present the kind of burden that the Northside residents have had to take to ensure that unruly parties and disruptive parties do not occur, as you have heard from many of these testimonies. And these residents have had to adapt not only to their changing community, and even when they have adapted to this changing community, they do not see themselves necessarily as in opposition to students. They want to extend that olive branch, and I see this social host ordinance as extending that branch. And I would implore that the council, keeps in mind that when considering the consequences that are suggested in this petition, including increased fines, that to consider that this does not have to be looked at as a strike down on students. This doesn't have to be looked at as even necessarily punitive. Education is imperative here because this is how we create a culture of respect between students who live in Northside and long-term Northside residents. And it's something that Northside residents have graciously extended even in the face of their community rapidly changing. And so it's time that we make this a two-way street, and this is, of course, a great opportunity to open up this kind of dialogue, even if it's not in the most comfortable way. This is the way that we are able to create respect. And so I hope that we don't shy from the discomfort here of potentially increasing these consequences when we are considering this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, we have Ryan Caro, followed by Jeffrey Hoagland.
Hello, I'm Ryan Kalo. I'm the Deputy Director of Stake and Local Relations for UNC's undergraduate executive branch. I'm here to speak on behalf of the executive branch as someone who has also had family ties to Chapel Hill. The executive branch is grateful to have been involved in this process from the beginning, with me and a director above me being the most recent additions to the CCC. Though despite this, we do not support the petition in its current form. I've submitted a statement earlier today detailing our thoughts on how we want this done, but wanted to also briefly speak on them in person. While the executive branch recognizes the need to care for all community members, we oppose the petition because it asserts using lofty fines against Chapel Hill residents that will not be a productive agent for deterring parties. Further, these fines are in the range of $700 to $1,000, as shown in the communities that this ordinance is modeled after. Further, the current petition, the ordinance's implementation would rely on bureaucratic systems that would disproportionately affect marginalized groups and students. We also recommend measures like fining all residents and landlords for the occupation of one occupant be removed, as this does undue punishment to other residents, allowing for community service hours as an option in place of fines, and vast education on the intricacies of the social host ordinance so that students can better understand what is governing them. We hope that these recommendations can meet the equitable ends that we are all here for. I thank you for the time to speak today and the visibility that students had in this process in the CCC, and look forward to more involvement like this.
And Mr. Hoagland.
Hello, you all. My name is Jeffrey Hoagland. I'm a failed candidate for running for town council earlier, which kind of brought me into another earlier point for things. When we were running, we were told directly by town staff that town debt was $118 million. During the state audit, it was found to be $189 million. That is a $71 million differential between what we were told and what the actual number was. Now, I don't mind going in debt if we actually have stuff to show for it. But right now, I'm seeing rolling blackouts in downtown. We don't have a bus that works a lot of the time. And just crime on the rise. Just multiple things that are going on with that. And I kind of want something. Like, if we're going to be 31% above our yearly budget in debt, I want something to show for it. Not just promises or gesturing of things. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are going to get to the part, oh no, you have your thing first, sorry.
Not yet. Well, first of all, council, you have a petition before you. I need a motion to receive and refer to the manager and mayor.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Berry,
Second.
second by Ms. Ryan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Up next, we have a number of people signed up to speak about the situation in Gaza. I do want to note for everyone that because of high interest and in order to allow more people to speak, each person will have 2 minutes. We have allotted 30 minutes for this item. To help us hear from as many people as possible, we ask speakers to stay in this time. And I will remind folks, anyone who wasn't here when we started, we don't allow signs, clapping, booing, or excessive noise when speakers are up at the podium or after. So with that being said, let's move on to our public comment.
Okay, and just so everybody knows, in the interest of fairness, since when you indicated when you signed up what you would be speaking on, I'm going to alternate between those two sides, and then we'll move in order through the list. So first we have Gary Zarkin up, and we have Hannah, sorry, I don't have a last name, for on deck.
Thank you. I'm Gary Zarkin, and I live in Chapel Hill. I urge the Chapel Hill Town Council not to pass a resolution pertaining to the Hamas-Israel war. But not everyone agrees with that, and you will hear emotional pitches to weigh in for a resolution in support of an immediate ceasefire. That is a one-sided and biased position. On October 7th, Hamas savagely attacked Israeli civilians, beheading, raping, killing. They took 240 hostages, women, elderly, and children, including a baby who just celebrated their first birthday in captivity. It's hard to imagine anyone supporting these atrocities, but there are many people who call that day beautiful. Hamas are not freedom fighters. They're terrorists who have vowed to destroy Israel and kill Jews. Days after the attack, they vowed to repeat the October 7th atrocities again and again and again. Israel did what any country would do in response. They fought back to protect their citizens. It turns out that Hamas hates Jews more than it loves its own people. Hamas demonstrates this by living in underground tunnels and not providing bomb shelters for their own people, by using civilians as human shields, by launching rockets from schools, hospitals, and private homes, and by stopping civilians from moving to safe zones away from targets. While Hamas seeks to maximize Gaza's civilian casualties, Israel seeks to minimize civilian casualties. Sadly, war brings deaths to civilians, especially when Hamas has made their homes a battlefield. Instead of investing billions on tunnels, Hamas could have spent the money building a productive society for its people to prosper and live in peace. We all want the war to end. Last line, Hamas must release the hostages and surrender or be defeated so that Israeli and Gazan civilians can be freed from terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Hannah next, followed by Abby Zarkin.
Good evening. Thank you for holding this meeting. Today, I urge you all to support measures for a ceasefire in Gaza, refrain from any measures that will cause current or future harm to Palestinians, and disclose CHPD's funding and interactions to the public. I unequivocally support a ceasefire, and I'm appalled at the bombings of residences, hospitals, and places of worship that are being funded by my tax dollars. The situation in Gaza is dire, with death, rampant starvation, critical injuries, and transmittable diseases being reported. This is unacceptable in any condition, but especially with a population that is 50% under the age of 18. Today, I want you to listen to a story that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. The story of Reem and Khalid. Khalid is the grandfather of the 3-year-old Reem, and he said that she was the soul of his soul. They share the same birthday, December 23rd, and were inseparable. In a lot of ways, they reminded me of my relationship with my late grandfather. Reem was killed by an Israeli airstrike along with her brother Tariq. I will never forget how her grandfather pinned her earring to his clothes that she will stay with him forever, or the way he gently opened her eyes to see them one last time after she died. I ask that you never forget either, as we remember all the martyrs of Gaza, and I urge you to adopt a resolution for a ceasefire now, standing with the majority of Americans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Abby Zarkin, followed by Melissa.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Mayor Jess, and members of the council for your strong leadership in deciding to focus on local matters. I remember listening to your December meeting where a teacher stood here asking to consider the children as if they were our own, living with fear of missiles and constantly seeking shelter. For a minute, I was heartened, thinking she was speaking about Israeli kids, who for the past 20 years had merely 15 seconds to run into bomb shelters, hiding from missiles fired from Gaza, intending to murder Israelis. But I was sorely mistaken. She either forgot this part of history or didn't care. She seemed to care only for Gazans. And to be fair, war is horrible. We all share in the anguish of civilian deaths, but where is the outrage against Hamas? After all, it's Hamas who's governed Gaza since 2007, and it's Hamas who has spent billions on their fortress of terror, stealing money from aid organizations and stealing labor from Gazan communities and materials meant for homes and hospitals to build over 400 miles of tunnels to not shelter their Gazan civilians, but to shelter Hamas terrorists. These tunnels were built intentionally beneath schools, hospitals, mosques, and apartment buildings, and are filled with missiles and launchers and bombs, turning Gaza's civilian infrastructure into embedded battlefield. They knew this would cause massive deaths and devastation if and when Israel retaliated for an October 7th attack. If you support Hamas, you really don't care about Palestinians in Gaza who deserve a life of freedom. They're not free under Hamas. They're hostages of terror. Hamas is not freedom fighters. They're terrorists vowing for the complete destruction of Israel and its people, willing to sacrifice their own people to achieve their goals, and anyone who aligns with them stands with terror. Thank you, Mayor Jess and members of council, for your wisdom on this matter and not passing a resolution, and for not being bullied into aligning with terror yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Melissa next, followed by Mitchell Pinsky.
Hello, I am a college student currently attending and residing at UNC Chapel Hill. For over 100 days, Israel has been committing genocide against the Palestinian people. For over 70 years, Palestine has been under Israel's control, and despite the severity of their actions, they have received a disgraceful amount of support from powerful superpowers like the US. Over 25,000 Palestinians have been killed, and over 60,000 have been injured. Medical care has become critically scarce, and many of the survivors are struggling for food and water. The current attacks from Israel, on top of killing tens of thousands, have also made Gaza completely unlivable for the still living citizens. Over half of Gaza's population of 2.1 million are under 18, making children some of the most affected as a result of Israel's attacks. As a member of this community, I am demanding that a resolution be brought to the table to call for a ceasefire now. I am also demanding an immediate divestment from all businesses tied to Israel currently operating in Chapel Hill. What is occurring in Palestine right now is inhumane and unacceptable, and if nothing is done, you are actively contributing to a genocide, and the blood of millions will be on your hands. Thank you.
We have Mitchell Pinsky, followed by Holly.
Oh, and also a quick question. So this blinks when
You
there's...
don't have to do anything. It's all auto now.
What is the yellow one? And there's about 30 seconds left?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Hi, my name's Mitchell Pinsky. I'm a graduate student at UNC and a proud Chapel Hill resident. The reality is there was a ceasefire on October 6th. That ceasefire was broken in the early hours of October 7th, when a genocidal terrorist organization whose explicit goal is the elimination of the one homeland, our indigenous homeland, we have roots going back 2,000 years, eliminated. They came. They didn't just murder. They beheaded. They raped. They burned. They mutilated. Not just Israelis, but the Thai workers. So I was actually just recently in Israel volunteering for 2 weeks. The pain that you felt in Israel was not only palpable here, is not only palpable there, but reverberates with each and every single Jewish person. When one Jew hurts, we all hurt. When I was in Israel, I went to the Nova exhibit. I saw the burnt cars at the Nova Festival. I saw the porta potties where people were firing guns into. The reality is, even if the entire world were to call for a ceasefire, Israel will continue to do what it needs to do to protect ourselves and the Jewish people. For over 2,000 years, people have tried to knock us down, and for the last 75 years, people have tried to knock the state of Israel down. The reality is, no matter what anyone says, sorry, just one last sentence, you can try and knock us down, but the nation of Israel and the Jewish people will get stronger, and Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Holly, followed by David McCrudden.
Hello, good evening. I'm a UNC student here to call on the Chapel Hill Town Council to adopt a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Since October 7th, the death toll of Palestinians in Gaza has reached over 25,000 people, in a population where over half are children, and over 90% of Gazans have been displaced. As of December, at least 1 in 4 Gazan households were already facing catastrophic hunger. The United States government has unconditionally supported the Israeli government's senseless bombardment of Gaza's civilian population, funded, aided, and abetted its violence. And any local government of conscience should stand firm in opposition to it. Israel is currently under prosecution by South Africa for war crimes in the UN's International Court of Justice. They're working to eliminate an entire people and an entire society. All schools in Gaza have been shut down, and every single university in the Gaza Strip has been destroyed by Israel. Think of how much life here in Chapel Hill is tied up in UNC and its facilities. Imagine the horror of that destruction, how totalizing it would be to live under. The asymmetry of the living situations in Israel and Gaza speaks for itself. It's appalling that our tax dollars are being used in this way. Many people would opt to say that it's a Middle Eastern problem and nothing here can be done. But Chapel Hill has a responsibility as a community of United States taxpayers with proximity to corporations and industries funding and participating in this war to make a clear, unequivocal statement in favor of a ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have David McCrudden, followed by Gabe.
My name is David. I'm a UNC student, and I'd like to pass it off to Rabbi Zalman to speak on behalf of our Jewish students and community.
Thank you. My name is Rabbi Zalman, the Chabad rabbi here in Chapel Hill, connected with thousands of members of people of my faith and other wonderful people in our community. So firstly, I'm here to say Jessica and Amy, Camille, Melissa, Paris, Theodore, Adam, Elizabeth. Karen's not here, right? First of all, I came here to say thank you. Thank you for your service of this great city. I probably am the father with the most kids in this town. I have 8 children and been here for 21 years, and I am thankful not only for the work that we see in front of the scenes, but behind the scenes that you do every single day, tirelessly for Chapel Hill and for our community. I remember when I was a young rabbi just starting off, one of my mentors said, Zalman, be careful, stay laser focused on what you can influence, on what you can make a dent and you can change. That's what you've been called for, to make an impact. Let international, global organizations deal with big existential issues. And I say the same thing to you all today. Chapel Hill desperately needs all of your energy completely here to solve the issues, to worry for our citizens. We need you to continue to create this beautiful community that we have, that celebrates each other's diverse opinions, but in a harmonious way. In any resolution, pushing Israel to cede its own ability to defend itself would tear our community apart. It's that simple. Anti-Semitism is rising on epic levels. It's never been this level since October 7th. Ask any Jewish person. If they haven't faced anti-Semitism, they have. And so therefore, such a resolution would inflame this and would pit citizens against citizens. We're one community with one heart. Let's make sure to keep it that way. And I want to say one last point. I just got back from Israel this month. There's a reason why Harvard just put out a study that says 80% of voters say they support Israel amidst their war against Hamas.
Thank you.
Don't pass the resolution. Keep on your great work. God bless Israel and America. Thank you.
We have Gabe, followed by Amy Rosenthal.
Hello, I'd like to thank you for holding this meeting. We really appreciate it. I want to start with a quote by the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." Everyone can see that there is a great situation of injustice in Gaza right now. It's on the news, it's in our phones. Everyone can see what's happening. What we're calling on you to do is not to be neutral. What we're calling on you to do is to support justice. What we're calling on you to do is to join the call going out around the world for the elephant to take its foot off the tail of the mouse. We want you, and we want us, all of the community of Chapel Hill and Carborough and UNC, to be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy Rosenthal, followed by Travis.
Thank you. Thank you. There are students here who have taken the side of the terrorist organization Hamas. Hamas wants a break so they can rearm and go back to killing Jews. Students are doing the bidding of Hamas, passionately making demands they don't understand. It's clear they are poorly educated and influenced by anti-Israel, anti-Semitic propaganda. They are swept up by the mob, joining a fad to destroy Israel and wipe out Jews. They demonstrate a tolerance of anti-Semitism that has now been normalized on campus. Students don't understand they are being manipulated and used to promote the genocide of Jews. Someday, when they are older and better informed, they will look back in shame at what they are doing tonight. As a Chapel Hill voter, I know you have important work to do for our city. I'm grateful that you do not plan to wade into foreign affairs despite a few vocal students demanding otherwise. Thank you for your resolve in sticking only to local matters, and thank you for all you do for Chapel Hill.
Thank you.
We have Travis, followed by Josh. Ravitch, yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Travis Wayne. I'm not a student, but I am the co-chair of the North Carolina Triangle chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. More importantly, I'm a Chapel Hill tenant. And so last year, while many of y'all were, sharing increasingly awkward stages in the process of the campaign, there were two things going on. One, Palestinians have been losing their homes as Israel attacks Palestinian neighborhoods, hospitals, and community centers. Second, my family lost their home because we couldn't afford rent anymore. The landlords squeeze us dry and steal our money for the right to live in our homes. Where does all that stolen money go? When the landlords take our rent money in Chapel Hill, where do they put that money? Those dollars turn into investments, more speculation on our backs. And you know what? Some of the biggest developers in the country are deeply invested in the state of Israel and the occupation of Palestine. If you throw in our taxes as North Carolinians, which directly support Israel's genocide of Palestinians, our blood-soaked money in Chapel Hill goes to blood-soaked campaigns in Palestine. These are local matters. That is unacceptable. As a Chapel Hill tenant, I stand in solidarity with our Palestinian neighbors who deal with displacement by rent here and ethnic cleansing in Palestine. They deserve a ceasefire. And as a first step towards divestment from genocide and apartheid and displacement, both here and abroad, I urge you all to stand up for our community members, apply pressure to our representatives in Congress, and call for a ceasefire. Ceasefire now.
Thank you.
We have Josh Ravitch, followed by Lauren.
Good evening. I'm a 40-year resident of Chapel Hill, and my handwriting is still sloppy. I apologize. There was a ceasefire in place between Hamas and Israel on October 6th. Hamas willfully broke it on October 7th, proudly videotaping while raping, burning, decapitating, torturing, murdering, and kidnapping civilians of Israel, USA, and other countries. They violate additional international laws by using Gazan civilians as human shields, including at hospitals, schools, and mosques. Hamas' long record of repeatedly breaking ceasefires makes a permanent ceasefire resolution absurd, a pipe dream. I sympathize with this city council. The small pro-Hamas group of several dozen students and sympathizers is trying to distract you from addressing issues important to the over 12,000 local citizens who voted in the most recent election, as well as the many citizens who didn't vote, who registered but didn't turn out last year. These issues especially focus this year on important things like LUMO and affordable housing, as well as the usual topics you have to address of jobs, education, public safety, healthcare. In short, you've got your hands full. We don't even make foreign policy. You don't even make foreign policy. So given how divisive this subject is to your voters, you're making a wise decision to table the topic. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Lauren, followed by Kathy Kaufman.
Hello. My name is Lauren Gorstein, and I'm a proud Jewish American living here in Chapel Hill. I'm also a master's in public health student at UNC. Prior to October 7th, there was a lot of things about this conflict that I had blindly accepted as truth. But recent escalations prompted me to really look more critically at what was happening, to listen to people in Gaza, and to see and hear their suffering. And once I truly understood the broader context of this issue, I was horrified by the violent realities that the Palestinian people face. I was able to critically examine my preconceived beliefs, and upon learning that reality of human rights abuses, of brutality, displacement, occupation, and genocide, I was able to change my views with new information. And you all too have the ability and compassion to grow upon witnessing the devastation by listening to Palestinian and Jewish voices when we demand an end to the 109 days and counting of relentless and indiscriminate bombardment of the Gaza Strip. But most importantly, you all have the ability to act. You are in a position of power to pass a ceasefire resolution and call for an end to the ongoing humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Join the public health and medical communities in demanding for an end to the climbing death toll in Gaza and for allowing the flow of life-saving aid, water, fuel, and medical supplies into the Strip. Join the international community, the 153 nations who approved a resolution demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. Join the domestic community of the 61% of likely voters in the United States calling for a permanent ceasefire and a de-escalation of the violence in Gaza. And most importantly, please listen to Palestinian and Jewish members of the Chapel Hill community standing here in solidarity today with one another, demanding that you use your power to vote for a ceasefire resolution and call for an end to the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We have Kathy Kaufman, followed by Adam Blackwell.
Hi. As those of you who know me are aware, I have immediate family in Israel, and I know many people directly affected. A member of my Chapel Hill synagogue who is in the room tonight lost 21 members of her family on October 7th and has 7 that were abducted into Gaza. Meanwhile, here, the vitriol and the atmosphere on campus is toxic. I have even seen flyers in town calling specifically for the murder of my friends and family. So I ask that you please not unnecessarily fan the flames. I'd also like to remind everyone of a few things about the war. All war inevitably brings death and destruction. Israel is waging a war against Hamas that it did not start and did not want. On October 7th, Hamas invaded Israel, tortured families with children, burned them alive in their homes, gang raped numerous women and teenage girls, and slaughtered 1,200 people up close and in cold blood. Right now, Hamas is still holding 130 Israelis in their Gaza terror dungeons, including 19 young women. According to hostages already released, several of those women are being continually raped by their captors. Hamas's stated mission in their charter is to destroy Israel and murder all the Jews. Hamas has been crystal clear on Arabic language media that it plans to continue these barbaric attacks over and over, and that it is perfectly happy to sacrifice an untold number of Palestinian martyrs in the process. Would this be a next-door neighbor that you would be able to live with, or that you would abandon your kidnapped family to? This war would end tomorrow if Hamas cared enough about its people to return the hostages and lay down its arms. Until such time, no American ceasefire resolution is going to convince Israelis to abandon their family, our family. You wouldn't do that either. So again, thank you. I appreciate your forbearance, and I look forward to you all doing the job our community elected you to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Blackwell, followed by Pamela Ransohoff.
Good evening. My name is Adam Blackwell. When I was a teenager, after my battle with my abusive parents came to a head, my mother told me I was no longer welcome at home. I felt completely and totally alone in the world. However, upon being kicked out, I was astounded by the grace and kindness of complete strangers around me. From the friend who took me in without a second of hesitation, to an employer who hired me back without a second thought, to a couple who let me live in their home for a few months. Slowly I was able to lift myself back up and avoid becoming homeless, a fear that I had held for years upon living in my family's house. In Gaza, 50% of the 2.1 million people living there are children. They are under the age of 18, and because of the constant bombardment of the Gaza Strip by Israel, the children who have not been murdered by Israeli airstrikes are left displaced and homeless. They are injured and they are starving, and all of them deal with ongoing trauma that goes beyond even what I have experienced. As they continue to fear for their lives, the international community fails them. I survived being kicked out of home because of the kindness and grace of people who did not know me, yet chose to treat me with dignity. Palestinian children are not granted this dignity by their occupiers, Israel. I stand here today before the Council of Chapel Hill to implore you to call for a ceasefire in Gaza City so that these children may be granted the chance to live, to feel safe in their homes, to find safety and joy. We have the ability to condemn the violence against them and preserve the sanctity and innocence of these children's lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pamela Ransohoff, followed by, sorry, I got a little muddled here, Caleb White.
My name is Pamela Ransohoff, and I'm married to David Ransohoff, who is a physician at UNC. He is Jewish. I am a believer in Jesus. We have lived in Chapel Hill since 1991. I want to ask you to continue your decision to not pass a resolution demanding a ceasefire for a war that was initiated by the terrorist group Hamas on October 7th, when Hamas perpetuated atrocities against the Jews in the kibbutzes, putting babies in ovens, cooking them alive, raping women, mutilating children, men, women, murdering many, and taking 260 hostages. Much anti-Semitism has grown as Israel defends itself. A resolution could cause division, and we already know of the anti-Semitism that has grown at UNC. So the wisdom that you have demonstrated through your focus, I'm sure, very long discussions regarding this matter is notable because Chapel Hill can stay focused on the local level issues. I'm sure there were very few requests after Russia invaded Ukraine regarding a resolution there. The request regarding the war that's going on now is about the hatred of the Jews in Israel. So thank you for your wisdom of staying focused on the local level issues that pertain to Chapel Hill rather than international ones. And I hope you'll not be pressured to shift that decision. Again, thank you so much for the hard work that it takes to run our town. We just so appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. White, followed by Tico Chavis.
Hello. I am a Jewish member of the Chapel Hill community and the descendant of Holocaust survivors. My grandfather, Jost Oppenheim, was born in 1936 in Western Germany. He was the son of Max Oppenheim, who was a shoe chemist and whose story has been told and retold many times in my family. Max fought for the Germans in the First World War. I believe he was deployed along the Western Front. After the war, he moved to near the Netherlands and dedicated his life to, of all things, working with shoes. When many of my other relatives were leaving Europe in the late 1930s, he decided to stay. Long story short, he was in hiding by 1939, separate from my grandfather. A couple of years later, someone gave him up, and the Germans took him away. When Max and my great-grandmother ended up in Bergen-Belsen, the same concentration camp where Anne Frank was sent, the Nazi guards told Max a train was there to provide transportation to a hospital for veterans. I can only imagine he was desperate for relief and maybe even hopeful for a bed to sleep in. The train was headed to Auschwitz, where he would, as far as we know, be gassed. My grandfather survived the war, including a harrowing car ride with a Nazi officer who my grandfather thought was just kind enough that he would understand that Jost was Jewish. He ended up in New York. A couple of generations later, and I'm here calling for a ceasefire in my grandfather's name and memory. I know in my blood what genocide looks like. I know my family's story. I know that this is what it looks like when genocide sprouts out of fascist rhetoric and politics. What Israeli leaders are saying about Palestinians is what the Nazis once said about my family. In Nazi propaganda director Joseph Goebbels' speech, The War and the Jews, he said that this war is a war of the Jewish race and its subject people against Western culture and civilization. This sounds so close to Netanyahu's Christmas message in which he said, this is a battle not only of Israel against these barbarians, it's a battle of civilization against barbarism. I'm going to take a turn here, and I hope you'll stick with me. There are so many issues in this town, and they're incredibly hard to deal with. Homelessness, gentrification, and the ever-encroaching university, the fact that many people here don't make a living wage. If you council members want to make this a better place, it's going to take a hell of a lot of backbone. I would be terrified to ever stand in your position. If you cannot call for a ceasefire, how will you ever fix this town?
Thank you.
Tico Chavis, followed by G. Tribble.
Hello, councilmen and women. I'm a student at UNC Chapel Hill and also a resident of the town of Chapel Hill. I am here because I believe that Chapel Hill should immediately pass a ceasefire resolution. For the past 100 days, we have seen death, grief, and anger at an absurd rate. This is because there is, in fact, a genocide occurring, and I encourage you to fact-check some of the claims by other people today. The longer we wait to call for a ceasefire, or the more passive role we take on this issue, the more we are ignoring the cries of Palestinian people who are begging for our support. By not taking a public or a strong stance, we are missing the opportunity to link arms with Palestinians who are suffering at the hands of an occupier that is heavily aided by our own government. A genocide is occurring before our eyes, and I find it appalling that it is controversial to ask for the violence to stop. By being a part of the United States, we must recognize the role of our own government in contributing to this problem, and therefore our complacency in this issue. Our money as citizens is going to bombs that are killing innocent human beings, many of whom are not older than I am. If Chapel Hill wants any sort of moral backbone, then we must pass a ceasefire resolution, and a few other things are not negotiable. If Chapel Hill wants a moral backbone, there will be the ceasefire resolution, there will be transparency regarding any ties between Chapel Hill Police Department and the Israeli occupation forces. The town of Chapel Hill must divest from Israel by taking part in the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And finally, there must be pressure applied to the state and federal level to encourage a ceasefire resolution and commit to applying pressure until Israel is no longer occupying Palestine. Public opinion is proving that the people want a ceasefire. Please pass a resolution and then continue to be active in your support of Palestinian people. If you don't, you are actively contributing to this genocide. Israel will not voluntarily stop this violence, so it is up to the rest of us to do what we can to stop it. You all are in a very unique position, and I encourage you to use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, we're at 30 minutes, but we inadvertently called 2 people in a row from the pro side, so we're going to do one more speaker in the opposition side, and then we're going to wrap up.
Before I'm going to start, don't start yet. If there is anybody in the crowd that triggered by the pictures, please look away on presentation number 8 or 9. May I start? Hello, everyone. My name is Yotam. I grew up in Israel. I want to touch a few points before we're going to continue. Jews are from Judea. It's written in your Bible, in your New Testimony, and even in your Quran. You only need to open the book in order to see our 3,000 years in this land. We are there. We are from there, and this is where our name comes from. My name is Yotam. I grew up in Israel. This is the footage when I got 10 years old. This is a celebration of the 9/11. This is when I understood, finally, what is this war is all about. If you want to go ahead and see this place, this is from YouTube, AP. This is a footage from 9/11 on Jerusalem. My neighbors celebrate 9/11, okay? And it was devastating. This can tell you all about this war and what's going on. If you go to New Jersey, you can see many Lebanese refugees, Christians, that got ahead and got into United States to seek for refugees from the civil war that the Palestinians that been in Lebanon urged over there. One famous one of them is someone from the news. After that, King Hussein from Jordan also tried to create a peace in the Middle East. They murdered him. If you look in what is this war is all about, this is the charter of Hamas. If you are really true Palestinians, pro-Palestinians, why don't you urge any of those resolutions for peace in the Middle East and a full country for the Palestinians? All of those was like...
Sir, we're going to ask you to address us. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we take down the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight and for giving comments and for your engagement on this important issue. I want to begin by acknowledging the worry, the fear, the pain, and the anguish that this awful situation is causing people across this community and in our own organization. As a council, our job is to look out for the health, safety, and well-being of our entire community. So the impact that this is having weighs deeply on us. Since last fall, we've been hearing from individuals on all sides of this issue. This has included calls for a ceasefire resolution, a resolution in support of Israel, and emails from individuals asking us to stay out of the issue entirely. Tonight, I want to address the issue of a resolution. I also want to share ways that I think we can be addressing the needs and concerns of our community at this critical moment. For the town council and for all of us, resolutions are an important advocacy tool. We choose the issues we weigh in on with great care. And as a matter of practice, we do not weigh in on things that are outside of our expertise or authority. When we do choose to issue a resolution, we work together to make sure that it reflects the interest of our community. And typically, council is unanimous in our support. In this situation, where our community is deeply conflicted and the issues are very complex, a resolution is not what's needed. Instead, as we have seen in other communities, it could serve to add to the divide. I know that this is not what some in our audience want to hear. As a board, we look for ways to make our community stronger and bring people closer together. To that end, tonight, we want to reiterate the fact that we share your deep concerns. We all want an end to the horrific violence. We all want the safe return of hostages. We all want everyone to have access to basic necessities, shelter, food, and water. We all want long-lasting peace. And here at home, we want everyone to feel welcome and safe when they go about their daily lives. Sadly, what is happening in thousands of miles away is making people here feel unsafe, which we need to not let happen. I know that people want us to do something and want you all to know that I have been in conversations with many people across our community about ways to bring people together, to listen to one another, and resources to support those in our community who are struggling or who have family who are directly impacted. With that, Council, would anyone like to make brief comments before we move on to our next item? Ms. McCullough, then followed by Ms. Berry.
I just wanted to add one thing, and that is that what I have chosen to do and what I would recommend for other people is that you can support charities who will provide support to those who are affected. That is something that we individually can do that will actually make a difference.
Ms. Berry?
I am not Jewish. I am not Palestinian. I am your neighbor. I am your fellow human being. I sit with you tonight, as we all do, to receive your pain, to receive your pleas. I had already spoken with the mayor today. I do not believe it is this council's right to ask for a ceasefire. What is my personal right is to ask for, as an individual, that human life be valued, that we continue to sit together, share our pain, that we not turn on each other. Not one of us wants to see someone else's loved one die. Not one of us in this room. It is complex. There are those who are playing a game with life, with the lives of others. Do I hurt? I do. Do I feel? I do. And I know each of you in this room does. Please do not see my position to not support a ceasefire as turning my back on those who are suffering. Thank you.
Again, thank you all for coming out and speaking. Before many of you leave, and as we wrap up this discussion, we invite everyone to join us in a moment of silence, keeping in mind everyone who has been impacted by this situation and our shared desire for peace. Thank you. Council, that brings us to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for our consent agenda? R1.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Berry, seconded by Ms. Ryan. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion is unanimous. As folks are leaving, I'm going to ask you to be quiet so we can continue our meeting. Thank you for coming, and if you would like to speak out in the lobby, you're welcome to do so. Thank you. Thank you all. Now we move on to item 7, an update on the North-South Bus Rapid Transit Project. I am just reminding you there's no action on this item. We are receiving an update on this important initiative for our community. So I believe with us is Caroline Dwyer. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Caroline Dwyer, Transit Planning Manager. Glad to be here in front of this newly convened council for the first time. And we're glad to present this update to you all. I'm here with my colleagues, Matt Cecil, the project manager for the North-South Bus Rapid Transit Project, and Brian Litchfield, our transit director. So for those of you who we haven't spoken in front of before, I will do a quick project team introduction in just a moment. I will provide a brief overview of the North-South Bus Rapid Transit Project. We also included a project briefing book, which should be attached in your agenda packet. If it's not, we can provide a link. That will give you much more information about the North-South Bus Rapid Transit Project than I would be able to provide to you here tonight. We will also give you a brief project update on our 60% design and engineering and station design concepts, which is an element of that 60% design phase. And we will also talk about some next steps and provide some time for discussion. So again, I'm here with our staff. This is your NSBRT project team here at the town of Chapel Hill. We are a much smaller team than many other communities bring to this size project, so we're all pretty busy moving this forward, which is why we have a really strong team of consultants supporting us. We have AECOM, our prime consultant, and a whole stable of sub-consultants who are available as needed that we can pull in for expertise on a variety of topics. The North-South corridor, I'm sure you're all familiar. This is Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, South Columbia Street, down through South 15501, running from Eubanks Road Park and Ride in the north to the Southern Village Park and Ride in the south. It is our busiest transit corridor, both in terms of vehicles, trips, riders. It is consistently among probably one of the highest transit ridership routes in the state. And that is what makes it such a great candidate for this investment in Chapel Hill. It also, because it has such great transit service, there's already a lot of people living and working and recreating along this corridor. So there's a lot of activity bringing people to and from this location, which provides the activity needed to support a transit project like this. So this project, the North-South Bus Rapid Transit Project, or NSBRT, we just want to remind you all that this is about much more than providing better bus service. This is really an investment in the future of the way people move through and to and from Chapel Hill. It is an 8.2-mile route end-to-end. 5 of those will be bus-only service, which will allow those vehicles to move much more quickly throughout this corridor, staying on schedule. Those bus-only lanes will be supported by different types of supportive infrastructure, including transit signal priority, which allows transit vehicles to move quicker through intersections. The signals actually communicate with the vehicles. If the vehicle is sensed to be off schedule, it can hold a light longer or cycle to a green light quicker. The whole project will also be complemented by multimodal infrastructure, including a multi-use path that is off the road, allowing people to cycle and walk safely along this corridor. And we will also be completing the sidewalk network and enhancing all of the pedestrian crossings along the corridor as well, improving the overall safety of this important transportation corridor. As a reminder, the project timeline, I'm looking at this slide and I thought I replaced that green dot, which threw me off, sorry. And I'm looking at Brittany, who made that comment the other day. So we are currently in our design and engineering phase. There are several milestones in this project phase, 30%, 60%, which is where we are currently, and then a 90% phase. These are aligned with FTA's capital investment program. And we are held accountable for meeting these milestones, and they are reviewing our progress at each step of the way to ensure that we are prepared to receive the very large investment that they will hopefully soon make in our community. The 60% design and engineering phase, I have to stop for a minute. Amy, is there a different version of this presentation? I think this is not the updated one. That was on the desktop, sorry. Sorry, thank you.
It's all about the dot. Yeah.
It's orange now, not green.
I'm relieved.
Thank you so much.
Is that where you were?
Yeah, I can start there and then skip to the next one. Okay, there it is. I know, right? You can see it now. That was an excellent excellent bit of advice, Brittany. Thank you. So these milestones align with FTA's funding program, and we are required to hit some assessment milestones in order to assure them that we are progressing successfully through the project design and engineering phases. So what we've been working on for the last several months is a key element of this 60% design phase, which is station design. This will be integrated into the overall project design and engineering, and is probably one of the most visible elements of the project thus far, which is really exciting for us because I think until now it's been very conceptual. This starts to put a picture with some of the things that we've been talking about for so many years. So it's exciting for us to start to see some of this evolve. We started out with a set of goals for our station design. Some of the things that we were looking to enhance through the station design, we're finding a design that complements Chapel Hill's existing community character. So that's done through things like materials and the actual style of the structure itself. Accessibility of the stations, both in the station, the interaction between the station and the vehicle, as well as the accessibility and circulation around the station, through the station, in some locations where it will be close to the existing sidewalk, making sure that people can travel around and through safely and easily. Also thinking about how to make this a more unique transit experience for people who are going to be riding on the NSBRT. most communities would consider this a premium transit service and charge more for a service like the Bus Rapid Transit. Luckily, here in Chapel Hill, we have fare-free service, which will remain fare-free on this system as well. I've probably said this several times, but it might be the only one in the country of this kind that would be fare-free, which is really exciting for us in Chapel Hill, and also a showcase project for FTA too. So they're excited about that. But it is an elevated transit experience, and we want to have the technology to supplement the investment in the infrastructure and make it a comfortable waiting experience, even though we don't anticipate people will be waiting very long because the vehicles will come pretty quickly. We also wanted to make sure not just that the stations reflect Chapel Hill's identity, but that they are recognizable as part of the Chapel Hill Transit family of service. That's something that we've been working on internally. A lot of branding exercises to showcase the variety of options that people have available through Chapel Hill Transit. So we wanted something that's recognizable as part of that brand, but also different enough that sets it apart as the Bus Rapid Transit. And then some sort of more practical elements. We were looking to develop what we were calling a kit of parts. So essentially, elements that are easy to replace, that can be switched in and out based on size or location, but something that wasn't going to be a huge maintenance or operational lift for the folks who are out there maintaining those stations. And then also, of course, cost, working within the budget that we had sort of identified for the station elements of the project. And some of the things we talked a lot about over the last few months with the community, with staff members, with internally with our operators, we were able to also bring in Brian Peterson, who gave us a lot of great urban design advice and talked about it in a way that used words that I've never heard before. Verticality. I was like, yeah, I'm with you, Brian. So that was really, really good. And he was able to, provide a translation, I think, between the architectural team and staff that explained things in a way and talked about the design in a really approachable manner. So we really appreciated having that. And he also provided some information in your packet too, which we appreciate. We had talked about lighting, signage, seating. I'll show some of these things in just a minute. And then the roof or canopy of the structure. So these are all different things that we worked through through a 3-phase process over the last few months, starting with like a super conceptual preferences exercise all the way through to a concept, which is here and exciting. So I'll talk through some of the elements. One of the things we really liked about this concept is that it highlights the natural materials that you see quite a bit in Chapel Hill. So those brick, stone, wood elements, those are all, we have what's called kind of a palette of materials available to pull from based on the location of the station specifically. So a station at Manning Drive might look different from a station in the northern part of the corridor, might look different than the stations downtown, right? So we can sort of mix and match a little bit. The canopy, having a large roof with a lot of coverage, was really important to the community members we spoke with, so making sure there's ample protection from the elements, both rain, wind, snow, and then sun, of course, in the summer too. Making sure that all of the options for seating and lighting and platform amenities prioritize safety, comfort, and rider experience, so making sure that this is a safe and welcoming environment. And that people are able to use the system easily. Making sure that it's different from our local stops, but still, as I mentioned, recognizable as part of that Chapel Hill Transit community. Family of products, we will be doing that through branding and signage and colors and things like that. So that will evolve a little bit more as we move through this process. And then the prefabricated elements that kind of make up the station form itself are cost efficient and easy to replace, but are still able to be customized through material choices, size. Size is another thing that you'll see vary. So again, the stations down by Manning will probably be closer to 120 feet, whereas the stations in some of our lower ridership areas will be closer to 58 feet. Yes. So here's just a few visual examples of those variations. So you can see the smaller stations where we would have fewer riders, and then on the right, those larger stations are basically just a duplication of those elements, matched several in a row. There are some seating options. So there's a freestanding seating option versus a built-in option. Seating is one thing that you can get more or less creative with. I think we were in Indy last fall and we saw a bus stop over by a baseball stadium that had like stadium seats for seating. I was like, oh, that's, you remember that. You know where you are, right? It's a visual cue. Maybe not comfortable, I don't know, but it worked for knowing where you were at least. And then some of those materials options, so stone, brick, metal, and those can all kind of be mixed and matched based on where each specific station is. So with that, this is just one very small element of a larger project phase, the 60% design phase. There's going to be a lot of opportunities over the next few months for additional engagement and feedback. We are starting to work on things that are super fun, like utility coordination, everybody's favorite topic. But, just moving through some of these preliminary technology discussions, having a lot of meetings with NCDOT and other folks who have a vested interest in the corridor and making sure that we're aligning with their plans and projects, and also working through this process of preparing for the risk and readiness review from FTA, which is a lot of, collecting policies and making sure that they know that we have all of the proper procedures on the books that a well-functioning government and responsible fiscal steward should have. So putting a lot of material like that together. But we will be back over the course of, the next few years, sorry, with a lot of updates for you all. Just looking ahead for this year, the next few months are important. When the president's budget is released, hopefully in March, we will, fingers crossed, see a congressional allocation for this project in that budget, which will then allow us to actually make the request for the grant, which is a whole additional load of paperwork. But some of that we're able to do now and prepare for. But in the meantime, we're still moving that 60% design forward with the design and engineering. We are working on things like executing third-party agreements, ensuring that we have all of our encroachment agreements in place. Next year, hopefully we'll hear something about state funding, so there may be some opportunities to recoup some of the local costs through the county transit tax that are being used, and finalize all of those local funding commitments. And then that would position us to execute the FTA Small Starts Grant Agreement in 26 and move into construction. So if you are tracking things regionally, this is kind of where Raleigh is right now. So we are also working with them and watching them very closely to learn from their experience, which is a wonderful part of not being number one. We have the benefit of learning from experience, and they've been very generous with sharing information and letting us know how things are progressing there. And that is the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you to staff for always amazing work, and we're really excited about the project. Council will go to any questions, then we'll go to comments from the public. We lost a lot of public, but we still have some troopers.
Not everyone was here for my really great presentation.
When you saw them lined up, you assumed they were here for you. It's natural. So council, we'll do questions. We'll go to the public, and then we'll come back for comments if you have any. Ms. Ryan.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. This thing's really going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah, we're there.
Okay, well, assuming that it's going to happen, can you talk to me about the expanded bus facility needs that we're going to need? I know we've seen a concept plan up at Millhouse Road. Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I am probably not the best person to, Brian, you want to take on the facilities conversation? Thanks.
Couldn't let you just sit there, Brian.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I was kind of hoping I'd get out of this without talking, and you may have been too. For this project, there does not require any specific facility adjustments or changes. So the concept plan that we've showed you is related to expanding our footprint related to electric charging and other infrastructure along those lines. So as that continues to expand, we need the space to park the buses, put the vehicles, do those sort of things, and then potentially add a building at some point. But as this project moves ahead by itself, it does not need and does not assume any additional footprint at our current facility to do that. Does that help?
Yes, that helps a lot. So is that just kind of on pause until we build our electric fleet, or do you have a timeline for that building that you're kind of looking toward?
Sure, we have. So I think as we shared with council when we did the concept plan, we have secured grant funding that will take us up to 90% design plans for that. And then once that's done, we'd be able to go after additional federal and state funding to pay for some of that. So that funding, again, if you don't have design-ready plans, there's really no use in submitting those grant requests or even really spending much time talking about it. So that's kind of where that's at. So when those 90% plans are done, then we'll be able to go after that and determine how much federal money we would have to be able to do that. We're in the process of finalizing the RFQ that will go out to do that 90% design work. I would anticipate that probably taking somewhere between 12 to 18 months. And as we do that, again, we would come back and not only check in with the transit partners, but also with you all as we do that as well, too.
Okay, great. As long as I have you there, there's a note in here that it'll be $1.4 million for operating costs.
Correct.
That is not all the town of Chapel Hill. What would the town of Chapel Hill part be?
So that is not. So that is the increment that would be in addition to what's already been funded through the Orange County Transit Plan, and then that would be shared between the transit partners. So each year that share changes a little bit as the costs are shared between the university and Carborough and the town based on population. But a rough estimate. So for the current year, the UNC is paying about 54% of the current operating cost. So it ranges somewhere between 52 and 54, depending on population. Chapel Hill's current percentage is 35.5. So it'd be somewhere in that range, depending on when it's implemented.
Yeah, just roughly, that's fine. Okay, and just a couple more that are quick. Utility planning, are we going to be doing underground utilities along the line? Are we encouraging that? Is that a thing?
Run. We will have to interface with underground utilities in some way or another. Though we are just starting those conversations to figure out what that means, what that looks like, who is responsible for moving things that need to be moved. We don't currently have plans to include those types of betterments, and we really haven't had that conversation.
Okay, and I don't know whether, as long as we're doing lots of digging and building and all that kind of stuff, I don't know if there's an opportunity here or cost savings here, but that would be great if you could have conversations about that. I know there have been places we've kind of missed that opportunity, and underground utilities would be a great community benefit to come out of this project. So slide 77 showed a BRT station at South Columbia, and it was kind of in the middle of the ramps. And we had talked during the Columbia Annex process, we had talked originally we had seen that on the plans, and then while we were doing Columbia Annex planning, a lot of people came and I think, and Matt, I think you're the one who really knew about this, but that you'd had neighborhood meetings and thought that it would be better off on the interchange, and then when kind of council and others were looking holistically, we're like, this is going to be a really difficult place for pedestrians to get to and to cross. So I just wanted to know if you had changed back to that original plan, or if that's still under discussion.
Good evening. Excuse me, I'm sort of losing my voice. The original plan does show what we are seeing today, and that is the bidirectional stations right by the road interchange. Some of that was a requirement provided to us based on some work that had been done through that section of South Columbia that we will not dig anymore, so to speak. Sorry. With the South Columbia Annex project, they have some potential space for us to put a station there. One of the biggest concerns is pedestrian movements and safety for that. DOT has said no, they will not allow a traffic signal to be placed at the Perkins and South Columbia intersection, which does create some very significant potential problems there. So as we are showing it today, is having both those bidirectional stations at the road interchange, which will include the appropriate pedestrian crossing and signals.
Okay, and again, I do remember, I'll go back and look up the old conversations, but I know some of that was what the neighbors negotiated during that South Columbia Road expansion, and I think there may be room to move, but I think there were pretty significant concerns about putting it down there, and most of the people, I mean, nobody lives obviously on the interchange, right? So anybody who gets off there will be crossing to get somewhere. Whereas if it were closer to South Columbia, you've got the folks right at Purefoy, you've got a lot of bus riders right up in the Westwood neighborhood. So you've got a lot of bus riders right there. So just if we can keep thinking through that one, that would be great.
Yes, and I will review some of the discussions we had. It's been a bit of time since then, and some of it was looking at potential station footprints, especially right there where the existing bus stop is at. The amount of space between the back of station and residential is tight, but now that we have a better sense of what our station dimensions and design will be, we can definitely revisit that.
That would be awesome, thank you. And final question, are we still thinking or ever considering expanding down to the Chatham County line, going there, or is that kind of a maybe someday?
I would say that's aspirational. If we stumbled into a ton of money, it definitely makes sense to make that kind of a connection.
Okay, great, thank you.
Council, other questions? Are there members of the public wishing to speak? Okay. Council comments? Okay. Oh. You're getting applause. Councilmember Berry.
Yeah, the three of you, our mighty team, deserve applause. I was talking with folks today who are just so sad about the loss of the light rail. And we talked about the north-south bus rapid transit. We need other options, and I'm so grateful that this is in the works. And I'm looking forward to March, but I know you have a lot to do before we get there. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, small but mighty team. Thank you for continuing to do excellent work. We appreciate you keeping us moving with you and remembering where we are and where we're going. So that is fantastic. And we have no motions or votes to make, which is delightful for all of us. So thank you very much, staff. Council, I neglected to include a petition when we moved to receive and refer. Sorry. We have a petition from Steve Moore on cemetery protection. I'm assuming he's not here to read that petition, but if I could get a motion to receive and refer.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Ryan, second by Ms. Berry. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is unanimous. I myself am slightly disoriented that we are going home so early, but remember, we're starting an hour early, which I think is working great so far. Thank you, Council. Congratulations on a successful first meeting. We will not be meeting next week. We have our retreat, so don't worry. We'll get plenty of time together next week, just not here. So well done, and we are adjourned.